Hi, good morning. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 2 of That Saturday Show. I'm your host, Tom Dent. That Saturday Show is brought to you by the Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice. We are a community of individuals dedicated to the peaceful resolution of conflict between ourselves and the local community and internationally. We're committed to ending militarism and the arms race, as well as the elimination of racism, sexism, and other forms of discrimination. That was our mission statement way back in 1988. The center's back open. Come visit us, donate, check us out, volunteer. We are under a mandatory mask mandate right now, but there's still a lot of things going on at the center. The annual Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice membership meeting takes place at the Donald and Sally Alice Thompson Peace Hall at the center, Saturday, February 4th, with a potluck, and it lasts from 12 o'clock until 3. So if you are a member of the Peace Center, save the date, and we'll see you there. The Race, Amity, Friendship Throughout History presentation by Connie Knutson is this Saturday, right after the show at 3 p.m. At the center. And on Thursday, January 26th, the lady that we had on the show a couple episodes, actually last week, J. Emily Peabody from Missouri, she'll present Champion of Resistance, her one-woman show on Jeanette Rankin, who was the first female U.S. congressperson, and she happened to be from Montana. And this will be at the Peace Hall at 202 Harvard Southeast. Again, that's Thursday, January 26th. And actually, the show starts at 6 o'clock, so as long as you're there at the door by 6, you'll be just fine. And as usual, every Saturday we have free food distribution in our parking lot from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. And the Peace Cafe is back open. It runs from 10 until 3 every Thursday with great free food, great music, and great activist conversation. For details on any of this, please call the Peace Center at 505-268-9557. We have an interview coming up at the later on in the show with our financial director, Suzy Beg, and our lead intern, Cheyeanne Frazier. And we'll have music by Carl Peterson and Los Domingueros, as well as intense political conversation with my co-host, Steve Cabiedes. Yes, we finally got Steve back. So hi, Steve. I'm replaying Shower Curtain by Carl Peterson, formerly of the Ant Farmers and the former editor of the Alibi, on purpose, since we had Carl on stage when we co-hosted the show way back at the end of last April. So hi, Steve. How you doing? Good to have you back.
Hey, thanks, Tom. It's good to be back here.
Cool. So we're continuing with our series on the New Mexico legislative session. It started, a couple of days ago on the 17th. The governor, for the first time in 3 years, delivered her State of the State address. This is the first time in 2 years that the mask mandate there has been lifted. And from what I've been reading, there was all sorts of people at the opening session. Deb Haaland, our Secretary of State, Secretary of the Interior, U.S. Secretary of the Interior was there. The newly elected president of the Navajo Nation, all sorts of people. So, Steve, you've been up to the state legislature before, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I've even worked on staff there when I was really young, too.
I've been up there lobbying about 3 different times for 3 different issues. And I'll tell you, it gets crazy up there, especially in the 60-day session. There's a lot of bills that we're going to be talking about that are going to be introduced in the state legislature. They're probably being introduced right now. They start in the House, right? Almost all these bills, unless there's a joint resolution.
So no, not necessarily.
And they can be introduced at the same time, or a separate bill can be introduced in the Senate and in the House?
Correct. Yeah, you can have concurrent filings. A lot of the budget stuff usually starts in the House, as yes. But anything else that's not directly related to the budget can be started in either chambers, House or Senate.
It's kind of complex, but once you get used to it, it gets even crazier. So, you know, a lot of the bills that we're going to be talking about were filed by the January 10th deadline, but apparently these bills can be introduced anywhere up until the third week of the session. Is that right?
That's about the way I always remembered it was about mid-session, midway through the session. But I would say that bills that have gone through what they call the pre-filing process typically are ones that like interim committees have been working on between sessions, or ones that have an enormous amount of political support, especially amongst the majority. Usually, the later it goes for filing a bill, the less chance it has of surviving, unless it's something that like the governor wants immediately or something like that. So yeah, I would say in the next couple of weeks, it's going to be a flurry of introduction of bills. There'll be hundreds and hundreds of bills on both chambers. It gets more every single year that these legislators have to deal with in the same amount of the 60-day period, which is why one of the members is putting in a bill to make the legislature more full-time for a longer period of time and pay them salaries.
Yeah, because like I've said on other shows, our legislature is kind of crazy. It's kind of classist. You have to have enough money to like drive up from Columbus or down from Farmington, to be on different committees throughout the year, to afford to stay over and eat in Santa Fe and the gas money and all that. I've said before, you know, I thought it should be the Capitol should be in Belen, and a lot of these committee meetings should be teleconferenced. But they've been doing this for a long time. And if you are sponsoring a bill or you're supporting a bill, it's sort of like hit and miss. You sort of need, at least when I was up there, you sort of need to plan a full day to be up there so you can catch your state senator, your state rep in between, House or Senate sessions, in between the committee meetings. Talk to them. If you're supporting a certain bill, you need to go out, wander around the Roundhouse and find your sponsor and talk to them about that. And also, what else goes on? Oh, also, once these bills are introduced, they can change. They go to a certain committee. They'll be reassigned to another committee. They may die in committee. The committee meeting may be originally scheduled 11, and then all of a sudden they decide to move it up to 2 o'clock or schedule it for the next day. So you really have to be aware of what's going on, and there's all this filing of paperwork on the walls that change, every hour, every 3 hours or something like that. You really sort of need to know what you're doing when you go up there. But what we're going to be showing you on the screen from time to time, yeah, there it is right there. That's the Legislative Council Service. And if you call that number, that's basically the hotline. If you give them your address or whatever, they'll locate your state senator or your state representative and direct you to their office at the legislature, so you can email them or leave your thoughts on different bills on their answering service or with their secretaries or aides. And you were working for a senator up there or a rep or what?
Yeah, I mean, in several different times, I've been like what's called assistant sergeant at arms, which a lot of times is just a security guy in a suit, keeping people from coming in and out of the floor or the committees. Or I'd also get assigned to a committee, and I would help put up all the bills for the day and run errands for the committees and sit in on the committee meetings, which are actually pretty fascinating. We always focus on the floor of the House or Senate and the final votes that are being taken. But like you mentioned, most bills get at least 2, if not sometimes 3, and if the speaker hates it, 4 committee assignments. And they go to these committees for hearings. And that's where you hear all the devil in the details and tweaks and changes and all kinds of things. You find out a lot of information you wouldn't have known because they're taking the time to deal with those specific bills.
So let's just say, let's take a generic bill that's going through the House. You know, it has to make it through all the committees. It finally gets to the floor for a full vote, and then it's transferred to the Senate.
Yes, then it goes to the other chamber, whichever one started first, and then it goes to the other one, where then it starts a whole other process exactly the same. If it gets through both houses, and if it gets through both houses, and on the second one they didn't change anything from the first, then it goes to the governor, and it passes. It goes to the governor. If the second chamber changes something, even a comma, even one sentence, they have to have what's called a conference committee, where members of both chambers meet and create a conference bill where they're both the same. They put it in both chambers, and hopefully it both passes and goes on. But, on really controversial bills, sometimes you don't get a conference, or there's too much disagreement between the different chambers. So, yeah, there's a lot that goes on, and it's really hard for a lot of bills, especially dealing with the really relevant, pertinent issues of the day. It's hard to get legislation through by the very nature of this game,
And there's a lot of bills that have been introduced before that are being reintroduced. We work with a group called Retake Democracy up in Santa Fe that keeps track of bills that they feel that should have passed and work to reintroduce them. And what we're seeing right now, especially in the House, as far as bills being introduced, there's tons of bills on gun control and gun violence. There's one proposed bill on tracking, how do I want to put it, dirtier police officers that have gotten themselves in trouble, that have done questionable killings and misdeeds in the department, that Raul Torres, our new Attorney General, is trying to reinstate. There are bills on enhanced sentencing for fentanyl. The qualified immunity bill is back. And like Andreas has said on other programs, hopefully they've changed it, because this is basically a copy of a bill that was introduced about 20 or 30 years ago that really didn't go anywhere. There's what other bills are you seeing?
Well, I think that there's going to be a bill introduced that will tackle the prohibition on rent control that the state has put out.
Right. Yeah, we were talking. Sorry to interrupt. We were talking to the People's Housing Project last week, and they talked a lot about that bill.
Right, and there's a couple of the other ones. One about banning large capacity magazines for small guns. The governor has asked the legislature to put in something about no straw sales of guns, meaning someone who buys a gun but really gives it to someone else, that they're not owning themselves. And one real quick one, House Bill 24 by Miguel Garcia, that I think is great. I didn't know this until this bill got put in, that makes the cities or counties responsible for the sidewalks in their own cities and counties. I did not know that it was the owners in front of the sidewalks that have to maintain them. I thought that's ridiculous.
Wow. Good
for you, Miguel.
Yeah, that is good. And like we said before, there's bills that are going to be submitted between now and 2.5 weeks from now, or whatever. And we're going to come back. We'll probably talk a little bit more about this. We want to talk a little bit about U.S. politics and what's going on. But we're going to cut this segment short, and right now you're going to hear from Carl Peterson doing Shower Curtain.
Somehow you convince yourself your girlfriend jacked the shower curtain up. Somehow you convince yourself your girlfriend jacked the shower curtain up. It was broken when she moved in. And somehow you convince yourself your girlfriend stole your favorite purple towel. Somehow you convince yourself your girlfriend stole your favorite purple towel. I said, hey man, it was missing when she moved in. And the story is wearing thin. It was missing when she moved in. I said, hey man, it was broken when she moved in, and the story is wearing thin. It was broken when she moved in. And somehow you convince yourself your girlfriend almost made you lose your mind. And somehow you convince yourself your girlfriend almost made you lose your mind. I said, hey man, you were crazy when she moved in, and the story is wearing thin. You were crazy when she moved in. You were crazy when she moved in. You were crazy when she moved in.
Thanks, Carl. We're back. We're going to talk a little bit more about the New Mexico State Legislature. Probably talking about the governor and the and her proposals. We apparently we have this huge surplus. How much is it, Steve? 3.6 billion or something.
3-something billion, yes.
And a good chunk of that comes from the Permian Basin money, right? And the governor's in her speech and other things, and she's been criticized by Republicans as going too green, but a lot of people know that she's kowtowed to oil and gas for a long time. The former speaker, Brian Egoff, was known for kowtowing to oil and gas. And,
he represented people in oil and gas.
Yeah, and now we have a new speaker, Javier Martinez?
Yes.
And
he also gets contributions from oil and gas for his campaign. So, yeah.
Right. And another thing they're considering, this is not legislation, but they're considering setting up blue and green hydrogen hubs around the state, and that was proposed. The hubs were okayed in Biden's original For the People's Act, and I think there were 7 hubs, and 4 of them are slated to be in New Mexico. And we've said on other shows that blue hydrogen energy is basically fracking in reverse. Green hydrogen development happens in water, and we have no water in the state, but the governor in her speech was proposing moving closer to universal health care, calling for a ban on assault rifle sales, giving a bunch of monies to schools and teachers and incentives like that. And also, she's proposed a rebate. I guess it's recovering from COVID for individuals for $750 and $1,500 for married couples. And they're saying, I guess they want to whittle it down. They don't want to give up that much money. But what else is she
Honestly,
proposing?
I think that in some ways what that rebate is this time is something that other people have proposed, which is we've gotten such a boon from our oil and gas production and the excise tax revenues that we get from that, that in a way, this is just kind of like Alaska does, where they send out once a year a check from that. They did that baked in when they started drilling up in the northern Alaska. But I think that's part of it, is that we have so much extra money that the idea of giving it back to the people is what you're doing with some of that. And actually it's something that Republicans have supported in the past, but now that, there's a Democratic governor, now they're against it. I think one of the other things, she's, big on the whole gun thing. One of the things you didn't mention in your list, she talked about trying to get a law to prohibit what's called straw sales of guns. And I had to look that up. What that means is where people go into a gun shop and buy a gun, but it's not for them. They then just hand it over to someone else, someone who may be a criminal or can't pass a background check or one of these other things. And so the idea of the law is that if you're going to buy a gun, a firearm, it's going to be for yourself and nobody else, and you take ownership of that. I think that's a really smart play.
And there's a couple of bills in there to increase the minimum wage again and the funding, and also minimum wage for state employees. And so once again, we're trying to do a legislative phone tree through the Peace Center. Contact us if you want information on specific bills that you're in favor of. And remember, we have that legislative hotline number. Email your state reps, email your state and senators, and call them.
I was going to say that you can also track the bills and find out what's going on with them at nmlegis.gov. That's the New Mexico Legislature's website. It takes a little figuring how to click and find things, but once you get in the groove, you can look up any bill anytime, see what's going on with it, and it's you can do that from your home.
And my question about the governor that we were talking about before we went on the air was, like, if she makes all these proposals, how do they make their way into the Senate and the House?
Right, because the governor's not allowed to initiate legislation. That's the legislature's job. But what happens is she's not going to go make a speech about I want this and I want that without lining up a legislator or two or four that are going to create that bill the way she likes it and put it through the process. So a lot of times when you see a lot of the bullet points, the highlights in the State of the Union or State of the State address, that's exactly what's going to happen. If it hasn't happened already, it will.
Cool. Let's switch to national politics and maybe international politics. What we're seeing right now, we're seeing huge weather storm cells. It seems like half of California is in mud and landslides due to atmospheric rivers after they've all been torched by nasty-ass forest fires over the summer. The South is getting pounded by tornadoes. What else is going on?
Oh, well, here in New Mexico, we're in what's called a triple La Nina, which is the third year in a row of a La Nina, which tends to be cold and dry. So we may be suffering from a drier than usual winter again, which is not good for us come summertime.
And I just heard that Scottsdale, Arizona's water supply is getting so scarce that they've cut off the water supply to a little town northeast of it called Rio Verde. They have no water at all right now. I guess, I don't know what you want to talk about first, the new composition of the House of Representatives,
right,
or the 5 or 6 classified documents under pretty much lock and key in Biden's residences versus boxes of top secret stuff and all that stuff in Mar-a-Lago and other Trump locations. What do you want to talk about first?
Well, we can talk about the document stuff's just crazy, and yes, you're right that these are a different magnitude of issues. I think the public at large is learning a lot about classified documents and how they're handled right now, where we didn't have a clue before. But no, I think the makeup of this new Congress is that you have the House controlled by the Republicans just barely. You have the Senate controlled by who knows. I think it's still going to be the coalition of all the Republicans and President Manchin and Vice President Kristen Sinema.
And where are they? They're in Switzerland at the Davos convention, giving each other high fives.
Absolutely, they're
crazy.
giving. So their switch to independent, the switch of Kristen Sinema at least to independent, actually to me is probably one of the most honest things she's done politically in a long time. She was never quite a Democrat, even though when she first ran for office a long time ago, she was a Green. So, the makeup though, because of the 60 vote thing, because purposefully those people did not allow the rule for 50 votes to pass things through the Senate, it's still 60, means that from some of maybe the more extreme legislation that may come out of the House is probably dead on arrival in the Senate.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about next. I've had people come up to me and go like, I'm so scared about these crazies that McCarthy is giving concessions to, and what Marjorie Taylor Greene is now on the Homeland Security Committee or something. And I said, well, don't worry. Once their investigations and crazy bills and things like that get to the Senate, they're just going to squash them.
Right. Yeah, and you have to remember that we need to. Well, it's good to pay attention. It's good to notice those things. It's actually a great opportunity to find out who these people really are by the things that they're going to attempt to do through their committees. The other thing is I don't get after it so much because think of it in reverse. If the Progressive Caucus, Democratic Progressive Caucus and the squad would have done what these folks had done 2 years ago, maybe we could have had Katie Porter at the head of the, one of the finance committee, or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or Ilhan Omar, or some of these other people at the head of committees, right? Now, of course, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes of the world would think that that is the most ridiculous thing, and would be saying the same things. So, this is just how the process works. And these far-right Republicans, they leverage their power to get what they want. And I can't wait for the day that progressives actually do that. They have even more of them in the House, in the Democratic part, than the Republicans do on their side.
Oh, I do think in the next general election, what is it, 2024, that a lot of these people who snuck into the House and the crazies and the election deniers will be voted out. And like Laura was talking during the program that we wanted you to be at, was she believes that there's a huge youth and diverse community movement, and also a movement from that has to do with women's health and women's rights that's going to help sweep these people out.
Yeah, I think Gen Z, millennials, but especially Gen Z, actually. They showed up this last time. Hopefully they'll continue to do so. Hopefully they won't sort of get sucked in by the system over time. But they did show up and make an impact, and that's only going to grow over time demographically. And I don't see generations beyond them getting more conservative anytime sooner. Mm-hmm. So, this may be a last hurrah for certain conservative factions.
Well, I told my daughter, who's 17, that you guys are going to have to save us and save yourself, because there's an odd phenomenon going on, and we talk about this in the later interview with Suzy and Cheyeanne, is that a lot of these kids have had like 2 years off and haven't necessarily been on their laptops and doing their assignments and stuff, and they're showing up at school and they have like really bad behavioral problems because they're not
socialized.
Yeah, kept in the socialized training, right. and I'm going like, I'm not relying on those kids younger than you. You guys have to do it now. The other thing is, when you look at it, if they hoot and holler and investigate this person for that and Hunter Biden's laptop, does this essentially turn into sort of like a 2 years of lame duck, or what?
A little bit. I mean, the House is right, because even if the House has the ability to impeach certain people or whatever, final decisions have to be made in the Senate. Right. So. Again, you run into that same sort of issue. Divided government, bicameral legislature with two bodies that are controlled by two different parties in our two duopoly system normally means massive gridlock. Mm-hmm. So about the only things that are going to pass are going to be conservative stuff that conservative Democrats like too, and it'll get through the Senate as it gets through the House. And so progressive legislation is, all but dead right now.
Well, one thing I wanted to talk to you about that we could possibly do as activists over the next couple of years is movement politics. We've looked at a lot of the past, the way activists and different groups and associates that we work with at the Peace Center have generally done activist work, and a lot of it was direct protest and going out to people. And a lot of people think, especially after COVID and during COVID, that those tactics aren't really that effective anymore. I've heard a lot of talk lately about movement activism or movement politics, and they're saying basically, if you really want to, let's say like 6% of the American public is actively engaged in movement politics, but if you have an issue that's really important to you, you need to show leadership roles, organize, get a bunch of people together to push your politicians and to actively push the media to recognize you on super key issues that you're very passionate about, like women's rights,
Right.
like right to abortion, like saving democracy, getting rid of voter suppression, and to create free and fair elections. What do you think about movement politics?
So, right, and I think especially...
Or movement activism.
Movement activism. Well, I think it's a 1-2 punch in terms of the electoral and the movement. You need both, but yes, I think especially in times where it's clear that you don't have in a legislative body or in an executive a friendly ear, and that if you try to go through the electoral and the legislation process, it's going to just die and die and die. That's when you have to build up the movement, especially. That movement politics is even more important, so that you generate the kind of energy that gets people to understand that this is important, so that either you elect new people who have the movement's ideas, or the existing elected people wake up to the fact that this needs to be paid attention to. Mm-hmm. So you're absolutely right that...
And it's almost like an upcoming election in a way. Many people don't even realize these bills and these causes are being considered by the state legislature until the session is beginning. And before that, a number of groups show up at the Roundhouse, and there's really nobody there. And then there's a bunch of people, different groups that show up during the session. And essentially, from what I've seen, people are making great speeches outside the Roundhouse. When we're up there to get money out of politics, we joined hands and surrounded the Roundhouse. But are the people inside actually paying attention to us?
Right, and I think that in that realm, this is where the people have to get tough. And what happens is you can go and you can do your rallies and you can do all your stuff. And then when you see your legislation die, especially in a committee, and especially when people of your own party or people who you thought were your friends politically are voting no on it or killing it or tabling it, you need to make a commitment to just not vote for that person again and find someone else. I think we revere our state legislators just way too much. We treat them, I don't know what. Mm-hmm. And there are other people who can do this job. And if the people who are currently elected aren't doing it, then we need to find someone else. That needs to be the message. Not only that this is a good policy that we want, and there's a lot of people that are there, but we are willing to replace you if you don't do it.
And you have to stay on top of your elected officials. When we were up there a couple of years ago, working on supporting legalization of marijuana, one of the prime sponsors, now Speaker of the House, Javier Martinez, was one of the principal architects of that bill, and he was at one point talking out of both sides of his mouth, and it looked like in three or four spots it looked like a really crappy bill, and especially about prosecution for specific amounts and growing so many plants in your house. And then all of a sudden, they worked on it. They had the statewide commission. They changed the wording, and the bill passed. So
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's how the sausage gets made. And by the way, it's not just our state, all over. And so you have to be willing to. And I'll tell you, like you said, going up to Santa Fe as an education, spending some time there, tracking your bill. If you have something that's really important to you, you need to find time to go to the committee meetings, to go up to Santa Fe, to do, or even to watch online. All committee meetings now are held live online at the nmlegis.gov website.
And they could do better media coverage. There was one guy from, Channel 4, Stuart Dyson, that did a pretty good job of trying to track all that craziness. But if you're not on top of it, you don't see half of the stuff that's going on and the importance to back certain bills. We're out of time with this segment. I really want to thank you for showing up, for coming back on that Saturday show, Steve. And what we have coming up is if I can pronounce this correctly again, we have Los Domingueros, which sounds like God War or something like that, but they're really good. We've had them on the show before. They're doing a song called Back to You. And after that, we have an interview from the Peace Center that I did with Suzy Beg, our financial director, and Cheyeanne Frazier, our chief intern. They're going to primarily be talking about the restorative justice programs that we're doing in 6 different high schools and middle schools in Albuquerque. We have a curriculum developed for that, and we actually let the students hold talking circles at the Peace Center and at their schools so they can deal with violence in their school, drug problems, and like we said before, like adjusting back to school after the pandemic. A lot of these kids I'm seeing are getting squeezed from both directions because the parents are back working and the kids are back in school, and they're getting a little bit out of hand at school, and the parents are giving them all this domineering instructions on how to behave at home and in school, and then the school is doing the same thing there, and they're kind of getting squeezed. So it's really tough for these kids. And the talking circles are very good, and when the kids talk amongst themselves, they prepare better questions. They talk with parents. Coalitions can go in there and hopefully help change school policy. But APS may have its own ideas. Apparently, they're developing a curriculum similar to this. We also have our Peace Rocks campaign going on. It's very interesting. You'll see the rocks, and they'll talk about what they did there. And Cheyeanne is going to talk about our interns that participated in, finally, I guess it was shut down for a couple of years because of the pandemic, the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Parade that happened last Saturday, and who they met in the march, the tabling they did when they set up at the Civic Plaza, and how they feel about, how kids feel about how their diverse communities are being represented. So I sign off and say thanks for tuning into that Saturday show, but we'll let you go, and we'll hear Los Domingueros, and we'll see you next week.
Something about the way she drives me mad, crying over dishes and the things, waiting till I'm cozy in my bed, just to ask me for a drink, a book, or even a snack. She has her eyes and thinks that she can pull a fast one on me. Those big old brownies got me feeling kind of warm. Who am I kidding? She knows that I love her anyway. Don't matter, 'cause all that leads back to you. So don't worry, 'cause I do the same to you. And as always, where we find a way to do all the things that lead me right back to you. She makes a mess. She's alright, she's alright, she's alright, she's alright. All the fucking plan fill me with stress. She's alright, she's alright, she's alright, she's alright. So we're finding ways to fill our house. She's alright, she's alright, she's alright, she's alright. But still she finds a way to bring me back. She's alright, she's alright, she's alright, she's alright. She finds a way to let that lean with a fast one on me. It gets annoying, really, why would worry, 'cause I do the same to you. As always, we find a way to do all the things that lead me right back to you. Let's see those hands up, guys. Albuquerque, let's see what you got. I heard that Burgueños like to party, and I heard it goes down at the Lodge Spat on a Friday night. Jose Chica on that trumpet. It goes a little something like this. All of those things will lead back to you, and all of my dreams will lead back to you, and all roads will lead me back to you, and well, for all my days I'll be next to you, and she about to rise and think that she can pull a fast one on me. It gets annoying, really. Why won't you grow up already? Sometimes I think the road gets kind of hard and kind of dirty, but then I think of my changuita, make me kind of, who am I kidding? She knows that I love her anyway, no matter, 'cause all that leads back to you. Don't worry, 'cause I do the same to you. As always, we find a way to do all the things that lead me right back to you. Whoa, whoa, don't matter, 'cause all that leads back to you. Don't worry, 'cause I do the same to you. As always, we find a way to do several things that lead me right back to you. Right now.
Hi, welcome back to That Saturday Show. Your host, Tom Dent, here. We're at the Peace Center with our financial director, Suzy Beg, and our great intern, Cheyeanne Frazier, who you've seen on the show before. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
If ladies is an acceptable term nowadays.
My pronoun is she, her.
Okay. You don't want to hear mine. It's too sarcastic, and I got in trouble for it before. But so hi, Suzy. Why don't you tell us about the direct services programs that the Peace Center is working on right now, and about the interns that you're working with, how many you have, and what exactly are you doing?
Thanks for asking. Well, about a year ago, we were established. The Peace Center was established as a restorative justice center here in Albuquerque, and so we all are certified mediators. All of our interns are certified mediators. We did the 40-hour class, and we work with Tanya Covington to do that, and as part of that restorative piece, we have started working with some public schools. I'm sure everybody knows about the violence in the schools and the racism that happens in the schools and all the different barriers. And so what we have done in conjunction with a group of people is we have come up with a curriculum. We're actually doing a restorative-based after-school program at John Adams Middle School. We actually wrote the curriculum, and we also, from John Adams, we take students that may have had some discipline issues and are looking at being suspended from school. And they have the option, they and their parents have the option to work with us for a period of time. And if they meet the criteria, which is restorative practices, some mediation if they've harmed another student or staff member, and once they complete that, then that discipline issue is no longer, they can stay in school.
So how many schools have you reached out to, or are you working with right now? I know you've been working with a couple of schools with the anti-gun violence, gun control campaigns.
Yeah, it's not gun control, but it's about a gun education, and it's New Mexicans to Prevent Gun Violence.
And they're one of our Pajola groups right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. And we, I've worked with Miranda for a number of years, and we tag team with them and talk to students about the violence. That's something that is part of our mission here. Obviously, at the Peace Center is attacking violence where it's at.
Really, especially in our community first. And it's been a problem for a while, but it seems to be mounting. Another problem that I'm seeing, just by talking to my daughter who's in high school right now, is that a lot of these kids have been sequestered for almost 2 years, and some of them haven't even come back to school. And when they do come back, they really don't know how to behave again.
Right. And part of what we do, actually a large part of what we do, and what we do here as a team, is there's a lot of talking, there's a lot of connecting, there's, and I'll let Cheyeanne talk about it, but moving forward into 2023, one of the things that we're going to really push to do, along with some of the community stakeholders, is we're really going to lean into youth. We're going to provide a safe space for them to be authentic, to be heard. We're going to, and we're already doing circles, communication circles, healing circles, talking circles. And, if you haven't ever done one, it's an amazing, cathartic thing to do. And when we're not sitting in a circle, we are often sitting working with our hands. And that's part of that connection piece. That working with South Valley Academy, working with RFK Charter School, working with Highland some, we've been to Sandia High School, and of course, our relationship with John Adams.
Yeah. And I heard that there's a school in Santa Fe that's interested in what you're doing.
We're actually going to go and talk to their staff this week. And they are restorative practice school. They're wanting us to come up and work with the staff and with the students, and hey, they're willing to pay us.
Right.
I think my daughter's school, Amy Beal, is on the verge of probably asking you guys to help them out, because from the rumors I've heard, is that some of the students want to do a walkout.
Which means that there needs to be a conversation, and what I have found is that there's usually a perceived power dynamic.
Yeah.
Teachers don't want to sit down in a circle and have a conversation with students because the perception is I'm losing the power in my classroom, when in fact if students are talking about walking out, that teacher has already lost that power. And so, the restorative piece is to hear, why the students feel this way. Let them share that in a safe space with the staff or other student or whoever.
And the problem also gets addressed.
And the issue gets addressed. That's the thing, is that unless we start having those conversations, that's why we're seeing, kids get so frustrated that it's easy, to be violent. It's easy to grab somebody by the shoulders and just shake them, out of frustration. And so,
Yeah, and also, too, launching, with our Peace Rocks, that's something that we also wanted to launch to also, engage more youth and, bring in those spaces for young people to talk about those problems. Because, like you said, we are coming from a pandemic where a lot of kids were in the house for, 2 years and stuff like that, learning just from on the computer, to now we're having to bring those basic human respect skills and stuff back. And also there's a lot of problems that the teenagers were dealing with inside of the home that they haven't been able to address. And it's like, you know, whenever it's happening in your home, you're less likely to address that with your parents. So sometimes it's just also a better space to have someone else to talk to and go over those things with, like a safe space.
Yeah, I'm seeing that with some students. I'm seeing that, you know, the parents feel bad about this. They feel guilty about this. They're trying to get back to work after maybe working at home, and they don't want to leave their kids at home alone, and they go on their power trips and start being very domineering, and these kids are just squeezed between their schools and their parents, and it really hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
So Cheyeanne, you're one of our top interns here. You work with Suzy all the time on this. You're kind of Suzy's right-hand person. And talk about what you do with her, what you do here, and the other interns that we have here at the Peace Center.
Yeah, so obviously, you know, I work hand in hand with, you know, building the curriculum and going in with the Pride on Duty plannings and different plannings like that for different schools. It's also very good to work hand in hand with that, because you know, like, what's going into it, what the intention is behind it, and also, like, from being fresh out of, you know, high school and out of school, it's like, okay, I can look at this point of view in my own way and say, okay, do I see this happening, or is this something that I can actually, you know, that we have to change, and like some things that we can add in, you know, from a youth perspective on the voice as well. I do work with like a lot of the, you know, the social media and stuff like that with the outreach. Also something, you know, that we did recently was the MLK March on Saturday, and that was also very, very good to do and to be a part of, because I got to be around my community as well, and doing the Peace Rocks and Martin Luther King inspired rocks was something that I feel like hit home, because I didn't see a lot of things for the youth to be doing out there during the MLK March, except for, you know, marching for the things that they and their family are there for. So it was very good to see the turnout with how many kids actually came to our booth and actually like loved it and did Martin Luther King inspired art and rocks, and a lot of them took them home, but you know, that's not the point. The point is to get those conversations flowing, and also to get that kind of like art therapy out there as well.
Well, that's one thing I like about my daughter's school and some other schools is they emphasize service. They have service days. They go out as interns to work in groups like the Peace Center throughout the community. And compared to my day when I went to a very oppressive boarding school in the middle of nowhere, you know, the concept of having youth and kids get together and solve their own problems is like, it's like amazing, but it's exactly what has to happen right now.
Yes, definitely.
Exactly.
And one of the things that we're launching, and it will all be youth driven, is our Peace Rocks campaign. And the goal is to work with other community stakeholders, and every month this year do an event, a youth event here at the center, big or small, getting people through the door, getting people connecting, being
going.
heard, hearing those conversations, what, you know, certainly in our day, what we worried about and what the Peace Center was founded on, which was, you know, nuclear war. Those are not the same issues that keep our young people now awake at night. Right. And so, you know, we need to be progressive. We need to serve our community. We need to hear our community. And then, as we've done in the past, we need to answer that call.
Well, we may have been, you know, with these power struggles and the draft facing us down and nuclear issues back in the day, they were heavy duty enough. But these kids are seeing like half of the country starting to fall apart due to intense weather and climate change. There's violence right in their schools. There's violence all around them. We need to do whatever we can to peacefully change the narrative from the inside out. Right here in our community in grassroots work.
But the first thing we have to be able to do is listen,
Right.
and
Exactly.
hear.
And
We have
hear.
to be able to hear it.
Yeah, that's been a major problem with almost everybody throughout the ages. Is nobody stops to listen.
Well, our
Exactly.
talking circles have been amazing, and most of the time I'm not in the room because it's all youth led. but the ones that I was blessed to be able to be involved with were very impactful and meaningful to me. The intimacy of those groups and the safety of that space is hard to put into words.
Yeah.
And you're securing, the Peace Center securing some major grants to get this going. I've also heard rumors that you know right now with the legislative session going on now, it's probably very hard to even contact the governor's office. But I've heard that the governor's kind of interested in this. And has this been brought to APS, for example, in general?
EPS is doing their own internal thing right now, and so we've reached out to some principals individually at schools, and we've had very good open conversations with some of the charter schools.
And it's not really like how it was perceived back in the old days when the school money like trickled downhill or whatever. There used to be particular neighborhoods that were targeted for nothing but drugs and violence, but it's everywhere right now. I mean, a couple of drops of fentanyl at El Dorado High School, and we lose a human being.
Yeah. The drug epidemic is also very, a part of the youth as well as like the whole community. So that's also a very big problem as well with what's happening. So I just feel like we all need to start addressing it and actually working towards the action as well.
And we'll be going up to Santa Fe to the legislature when the Benny Hargrove bill is heard. It's something that that we hear time and time and time again. Is guns, violence. And I think that it will be a great experience for our youth to take a trip up there.
And like what I was talking about with Steve earlier, by January 10th, there is at least 10 gun control related bills slated to be submitted into the legislature in the House.
We'll see how many actually don't die in committee.
Make it anywhere, yeah.
Don't die in committee, yeah.
Well, it looks like we're winding down, but Cheyeanne, I want to hear from you again. I mean, from the heart and how kids are feeling right now. How do you view all this?
Honestly, it's very hurtful, but like seeing the things that the people were marching for at the MLK event also gave me empowerment to say that these people are actually listening and they can see what's going on. So it's not like we're completely blind to it. It's just that if we could all work together and as a unity, it would get so much further, our messages.
All right. Thanks for being with us, ladies, and we'll see you next week on that Saturday show.
Until the next time, it's time to say goodbye. When you out here in the streets, keep it real, 505. We love everybody, we just want to let you know. Thanks for tuning in to that Saturday show.